I'm about to finish another sketchbook, so it's time for me to get a new one. But I haven't bought a new sketchbook in over a decade because I learned how to do bookbinding a while back. And once you know how to do that, and it's not that difficult, you can put together exactly the paper you want and exactly the configuration you want and have the perfect sketchbook for you. And that's what I did this morning when I made my new one. So I recorded the process, and it's going to be kind of long, but I didn't want to skip any steps. So you'll see everything it took me to make this book and another wee one that I made from the offcuts. So here we go. So this is my previous diary comic sketchbook. I'm just going to go through it really quickly here at like quadruple speed. You can't really read them here, but I've scanned all of these comics and they're posted on my blog at haim.inc in the blog section. And this book actually cracked because I was scanning it and pressing it hard on the scanner. And you could see that it was signature bound, so they're groups of pages. And this book actually takes place over 2 years or so, which is a lot longer than I normally go through these quickly, but things were happening in my life that just kind of crowded out the diary comics. Most notably that my husband and I started doing respite foster care, and then the young man that we met, we just fell in love with him, and he came to live with us and then moved in permanently, and now we're adopting him. So that's kind of crowded out some of the time that I would have been spending doing diary comics, but of course I wouldn't have it any other way. This is the paper that I like to draw on. It's quite a light paper, but it takes ink really well, and I color in with watercolors, and it stands up to that too. My previous sketchbook that you just saw was Bristol board, and it's quite heavy, so it made a really chunky book to carry around. And this book will be quite a bit lighter and the same number of pages. Here's me using my diary comics template just to make sure that I'll have enough space to fold over these pages and still have it fit my comics. And it's tight, so we'll see, but it should be okay. This is the price of getting to work with this paper that I really like. I have a guillotine here, which is kind of over the top, but I use it a lot, and I've had it for a decade or more. So this is me trimming the page down to the size of the paper that I want, and I got this extra bit as well. So now I remove it from the backing, and my pages are ready to fold. I've sped this process up. Again, a scoring board is a bit of a luxury, but this is something I do a lot, as you can see from the grotty state of the thing. So this is me folding all the pages for the interior, and scoring just makes it fold a little more crisply. So I'm trimming my end pages, which go on either end of the interior pages, just because they give it a stronger hinge when it attaches to the cover. Now I fold all my pages, and I'll have my book block. Now this is the Stamps Away padding press, which is, again, a total luxury, completely unnecessary. This is good for making what's called perfect bound blocks of notepads and anything with a glued edge. And the nice thing here is it lets me fit my pages in, and it gives me a bumper to kind of tap them up against to keep them nice and straight, because that's really fiddly to do otherwise. Then you screw this into place. And then this end piece, the bumper to the front, folds away when you don't need it, which is really handy. And then there's this extra press clampy bit with mylar inside so that the glue doesn't stick to it. Well, it does, but not as badly as it would just to the particle board. So tighten that up. Now, I skipped a step here, and I'll get back to this later on. So just a bookmark. We'll come back to that. And now I glue these, and I try really hard to get it into all the little crevices. And again, the bit I'm going to add later on will clarify how to do that a little better than what I'm doing here. So I'm trying to get the glue into all the little crevices in the pages, and it's a bit of a challenge. Once that's done, I'll put this aside to dry. And since I got those offcut pages, I can make another little sketchbook, and I'm quite excited about this one because this is kind of exactly the size that I draw characters at. So this will let me just do individual drawings. So this is a press that I made, again, years ago, just a couple of pieces of wood, drilled holes through them. I put some metal in just, again, to work sort of like the Mylar does in the patting press, just to keep the glue off the wood, because the wood is absorbent, but the metal is not. But without that bumper on the end, it's tough to get these lined up just right. So this is a bit more fiddly. And again, you don't need a specialist piece of equipment like this. You could just use 2 rulers and some elastic bands, or just some binder clips, anything just to hold the pages tightly together. But because this is a thing I do fairly regularly, I like to have things to make the process more predictable and simpler. So I'll just tighten these up. And then it's time to glue the spine. Now, I'm still learning how to act in the center of the camera here. I don't record these very often, so the process is still a work in progress. Again, trying to get it deep into every little crevice between the pages. Now that the book block, this collection of pages for the interior, is dried, you can see all the pages and the end papers, which again provide a little bit heavier a hinge to glue this into the cover. And speaking of which, it's time to make the cover. So I have this chipboard that I bought, and again, you could use something heavy. Cardboard doesn't work nicely because of the spaces in it. It gets kind of squishy and wobbly. So chipboard is kind of nice. So I'm measuring the cover, but then a little slice that'll go in the spine. Then using a craft knife, giving that a cut. I don't remember when I learned to do this, but if you line the edge of the ruler up with the edge of the board, it helps straighten it a little bit. Yeah, so here's the spine. And none of this is going to be directly seen, so there's a little bit of latitude here for it to not be perfect. And now I have to do the other cover. So I'll just trace this so that they match. Cut that. Sorry for the gory scar on my hand. That's from where I had a bike accident a number of years ago when my bike hit the streetcar tracks in Toronto, and I went over the handlebars and had 3 surgeries on my hand, which is not a fun time when you're a cartoonist and you can't use your hands. My husband had to take care of unspeakable things for me. That's when I knew for sure I had a good one. So here I use spray glue to attach a legal sized piece of paper to the paper that I liked, because the cover paper I chose, it isn't the toughest. So I thought, with this flexing and bending all the time, I should really reinforce that. This is the best thing. They're like $12 on Amazon, but it's this multi-tool that does so many things in bookbinding. And you'll see me put it through its paces here. And I'm not even doing all the things that it does. So you can use it to figure out how much wider than your pages here, this is my cheat, is I'm using a tape runner to attach the boards to the cover paper, which is a total cheat, but this is a book for using. This is not to go in a display case somewhere. This is something I want to finish and then open up and just start to use. So here, this ruler gives me the space for the hinge between the front cover and the spine. And I always got this wrong. I never knew how to judge it before, and this ruler just figures it out perfectly. So I'm using the tape run on the back cover. And again, the ruler will give me exactly the right space for the hinge because I made them too wide or too narrow. Now it helps you figure out how much bigger, and actually, because it doesn't really matter. I need it just the gist. So this tells you how much overhang you need to fold the page, the paper over the cover. And I start off using a ruler here, but then realize, it doesn't really matter. It's folding over, and then this bit is going to be hidden and never seen again. So it doesn't really matter. There we go. Lose the ruler, Hayne. You can do it. Okay, so the ruler comes back, and now it helps you figure out how much you can remove from the corners, which is really helpful because it's less paper to bunch up and get in the way, and yet it leaves enough that the corner is covered. Again, this was a really hard thing just to eyeball and figure out. Trying to figure out the best way to do it. No, it does have to overlap a bit on the board. And one last corner. Here we go. It has a little rounded bit that can help you figure out how to round the corners too, but I don't do that here because I don't have enough spare margin to sacrifice any paper. And now, yep, that's one. Oh, but the spray glue didn't hold. So, and I think my tape runner runs out somewhere here. Just did a partial job, which is almost worse than not doing the job at all. Here we go. Now the outside edges. Oh no. Bumped the camera. Still getting used to. Don't do it again. All right. Here's my cover done. And I actually cut my hand on the cardboard there because it's really sharp. This is another brilliant thing the tool does, is it helps you figure out where to put holes so that you can put an elastic in the cover to hold it shut. And then again, a tool I bought a long, long time ago and have used a whole bunch. And it's this kind of rotating screw of a hole punch. So there's kind of not quite a ratchet, but there's a mechanical motion that it does. But then sometimes you just got to force it. Now let's bonk. Use the awl just to clear out that hole. I have to go away and get some thread elastic. So now I'm going to thread this through the holes that I've made. Trim that off. And cheat and use some tape, because I tried just tying the thread elastic in a loop in the past, and that will come undone when you use it for a long time. So just tape it in place. And yeah, gluing doesn't work so well either. And I'm also going to put some tape over the spine here, because that's a bit that gets the most stress and use. So I've got some fabricy bookbinding tape, but again, you could use duct tape if you want. Right, so there's that. And I always like to cheat and kind of look at the end result before it's time. So put some hinges in the paper. And now I'm ready for what's called casing in, which is when you attach the book block to the cover. And the spacing of this is a tricky one. I don't know that I really got it right. You know, you want the hinge to go just right so that it doesn't put too much stress on either the paper or the cover. So I'm doing my best here, but I'm also going to link to some guides from other YouTubers who do a beautiful job of demonstrating how to do this stuff. So you can take a look at those. And here I'm trying to spread it as evenly as possible so that I don't get any kind of wibbliness to the paper. Keep it wet enough that it doesn't dry out before I place it. And then, yeah, try to get the spacing of that just right. And this is a real art. And it's not something I do that often, that again, I kind of have to relearn it each time. And in the back, particularly, there's the matter of getting enough glue in there so that those elastics don't show. And now I have to glue the front cover. Again, sorry, I'm a little off center. There you go. There you go. Hey, I'm learning. All right, moment of truth. Actually, several moments of truth, because this takes a little bit of adjustment, and there is some wiggle room for a while. Now, normally I would have guillotined the outside edge of this book block, but I just didn't have enough spare paper to still fit my Diary Comics template. So there we go. And didn't realize here's my hometown of Windsor, Ontario. Hey, Windsor. Wasn't even intentional. And I did the same process with that other little book block. So there we go. And now I'm going to put my saddle stitch stapler on there and let it dry. Now, here's the bit I was talking about earlier. Because this is just perfect bound, there's not a lot holding these pages together, just the glue, which is kind of frail. You'll see with a regular perfect bound kind of book, like James Kochelka's excellent Cute Manifesto, the pages are glued together, but they're also glued to the outside cover, which makes it nice and tough. They also use a kind of a heat glue, but I don't recommend using hot glue for doing spine binding because it's kind of rigid and doesn't really soak in. So here's a little jury-rigged thing that I made just to show that you can do this much more simply. But if you clamp the pages lower down, and this is what I should have done with the patting press, is put the glue on, but fan the pages, bend them one way, and try to get the glue really in there as much as possible. And then a bit more glue. And fan them back in the other direction. This is good and sopping wet. And what some people do is they'll now wrap cheesecloth or linen or something over the spine so that it has something extra to cling to. So I'm just going to use a piece of paper here, which I really should have prepared beforehand. So just put that over so that the pages have something to cling to other than just their nearest neighbor. And that's what I should have done on the inside of this book. So it may end up splitting like my previous one, but that's okay. Just means I can give drawings away or I can scan it a little more easily. So I'm just going to press this down and there. So these are my next sketchbooks. I hope you found this interesting, hopefully helpful. And again, there are lots of resources in the description below to the tools that I used and some other YouTubers who give some excellent tutorials on how to do bookbinding of a whole bunch of different sorts. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.